Hypnotic with In Your Corner. And welcome to the In Your Corner show. I'm Lois J. If you're just tuning in, today we have Dale Stanton, author of the book entitled The Hooker's Daughter. Many people have a single lifetime career. Not Dale. She is into her fourth. While raising her young family, Dale obtained her RN degree and practiced psychiatric nursing. She parlayed her medical and extensive sales experience to become CEO of her destination management company, which for 20 years organized conventions, corporate events, and meetings for national and international guests. Dale conducted numerous educational seminars and assisted in developing a tourism college degree program. During her fourth career, she penned her memoir and has immersed herself in the marketing process. Through her speaking engagements, she hopes to help others overcome difficult circumstances based upon her personal life experiences. Dale resides in Boston and Phoenix with her husband. And Dale, thank you so much for being on iRock Radio FM, the In Your Corner show. How are you today?
Well, just terrific, and thank you so much, Lois, for inviting me. I'm delighted for this opportunity.
Well, you are certainly welcome. You have a book, a very, very wonderful book called The Hooker's Daughter. Dale, who has been, first of all, who inspired or what inspired you to write the book?
Well, I want to say that what I write in this memoir, first of all, is all true, and I really wrestled with telling my story and what part should remain confidential and hidden and what part should be revealed. And when do you let others into your inner sanctums and when do you not? But I really realized that secrets can be like infections, which if concealed, they fester and they can become monsters. And these were not small issues to touch upon, and it really made me address intimacy and trust, vulnerability, and my self-confidence. And finally, I decided to tell the story like I remembered and pulled no punches.
Oh, I see. Okay. Dale, what was the hardest part about writing the book, and what was because you said, there's, with a background such as what you come from, I'm sure, it's not easy for me, it wouldn't be at all to speak anything about it, but, and this is the thing too, a lot of people, have stories to tell, but the shame and the guilt and all that keeps them from sharing, so, I really, really want to applaud you for this. And but what was the hardest part?
Well, the hardest part was, in fact, feeling like I might be betraying my family, even by telling the story, because I had really been brought up to honor my parents, and no matter what, not to be a traitor, nor to go forth without being protective of them. So in doing that, I think that a lot of that fear was residual. It hung with me even years after my mother and father were gone, but it was something that was very much embedded in me. And I had shielded all my past from my children. And I decided as they reached a ripe old age of late teens that it was time for them to really know what my life had been like. So that's what made me decide to bite the bullet. And I really felt it could have been a dark book, a mummy dearest, but I wanted to present the book instead of condemnation, that it would be a story of love and forgiveness and really triumph over one's demons, which I really hope that people get from reading the book. And when I go out in presentations, that's basically what I speak about overcoming obstacles and difficult and dire circumstances in their lives.
Okay. What sticks out in your mind the most about what happened back then in your childhood?
What sticks out the most would be, I would have to say, I faced a great deal of rejection as a child. As I write in my memoir, I was answering the door for John's by the age of 6, and even though I mean, I was a child, but I understood that things were really all screwed up and not right. And it was very difficult, but I had made a promise to myself that I was going to stay strong. But along my path, children, many were taken away, weren't allowed to play with me. And as I began to mature, and I write it also in the book, I was even asked to leave the Girl Scouts. I was probably 10 or something like that. And here I was, a little innocent child. And as I grew older, if I had boyfriends, the families would say, oh, no, you can't go with that young lady. And so it was always dealing with a lot of rejection because everybody knew of my family's reputation, and they did not want their children to be exposed to me. And the other part of it that was very difficult was my sister, who was 6.5 years older than me. She was very much at the time my caretaker, my mentor, if you will, and I was only 9 years old, and this is 60 years ago. She came out as a lesbian, and in those days it definitely was a very extreme action to take. There were no things like gay pride parades and adoptions and marriages and things that are very much embraced in our society today. And when she ran away from home, the police found her. They put her in a convent, and then they put her in a mental institute. And she was certainly not crazy, but in those days, that's how they dealt with it. Eventually, she ran away from home, and I saw very little of her. She was homeless for quite a long time. So I'm referring to this particular period because when you asked me what I remember what was difficult, here I was dealing with a family that was very dysfunctional. And then when my sister, whom I looked to for a lot of support and as my heroine of the time, then she suddenly became this strange person in a 9-year-old's eyes. And as the years ensued, it was a very sad loss to me. Eventually we came together. Using the word loss isn't quite the right word, but for that particular time it was a loss to me.
Right. What type of person was your sister at that time? I mean, the way you saw her.
Well, the way I saw, first of all, she was very rebellious, and she didn't want to adhere to authority at all. And her persona was very masculine, and she really made a statement when she came out. Again, to reiterate, in those days, people didn't do that kind of thing. She walked around with a very severe DA cut for then, wore more men's clothes, and just was very butch, to use the term. And it was, that was her message, like, not only don't mess with me, but then, of course, when she ran away, I mean, she was on her own mission.
Okay. What about the relationship you had with your parents? And, I mean, did your mom ever explain anything to you as a child? How did you feel? What was communication like? Or were you just expected to do whatever she said do?
Well, yes, I think I was expected to do anything that she said. Her boundaries were almost non-existent. We were exposed to all her indiscretions, and we were cajoled to participate in her lying and manipulations. We lied to her father about her activities, and we basically acted like props. And she did shoplifting and scam checks and various other antisocial activities. But we just were conditioned to go along with the flow and not dishonor or betray no matter what was going on. And yet my mother, in fairness to her, I mean, she was a complex personality. She was very nurturing, and she did the best she could. She was kind, and she was sensitive, and she taught us, my sister and myself, to be kind and not shame others, despite that we were shamed, perhaps. And she cared for her family, and I truly always believe she saved us from poverty. She was a survivor, and I definitely admired her spirit. She lived life to the fullest and seized the moment. But again, her boundaries were pretty confusing.
Right.
She never abused. One other thing I have to say, we were never abused emotionally, or she was very generous with her praise about what wonderful girls my sister and I were. And so in one sense, we certainly suffered a lot of sorrow, but on the other hand, she certainly built us up.
Right, right. You know how when you're a child, you always have the little questions, the why questions, why this, why that. Did you ever find yourself asking your mom why?
Oh, definitely. And I think as a child, and I certainly didn't have the power, that I thought I could control her and wanted her to not do what she was doing in all forms. I wanted it to be a normal life. I only wanted to just be like normal for whatever that meant to me.
Yes.
And, of course, it was nothing that I could do. There was nothing I could do about it. But I did try to cast out her negative influences, but I did absorb her browbeating lessons. Mm-hmm. And eventually, as the person I have become, I realized that she had really given me a gritty strength to fight my way through trouble and hardship. She was a fighter, a survivor. She did what she had to do. She saved us. I felt, I said that before. Mm-hmm. And I loved her, and I hated her for who she was and for what she had done to and for our family. And it was such a complex relationship. We laughed together, we survived together, but on the other hand, we fought each other to exhaustion, and she certainly sacrificed us to save herself. And she wasn't above lying or stealing from me, but then she wasn't, it wasn't unusual because she could sing and dance with me as if nothing bad or perverse had ever transpired.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about your like other children in the neighborhood or kids you went to school with, that sort of thing? Because usually something like that causes you to really feel different from other children.
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me. What about the other children?
Well, you said that you were asked to leave Girl Scouts, and did you feel
correct.
different from other children? You know, like, I mean, I remember a time when we weren't the richest people in the world. I grew up in a poor family, so whenever I was around like kids at school, I felt poor. I looked poor and I felt poor.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, and I knew there was something different about me because of the other children. They came to school. They were nice and neat. Their clothes were really nice and neat. But I, didn't look like that. And I felt that there was something different about me.
Oh, well, I think now, understanding your point, I definitely felt different from the other kids, but I kept it to myself, and I tried to be, it's almost like being a voyeur into other people's lives. I paid attention to what seemed to me that I could, if I went to other children's houses to play or interacted, that what those families were doing and what I perceived to be normal, because I well knew that my environment was very not normal, if you will,
Right.
very dysfunctional.
Yes,
so I
yes.
absolutely knew that things were awry.
Right. Okay.
Johns were coming and going, and it wasn't just to the house. I mean, my mother had a pretty big network, and so it trailed me everywhere I went.
Right, right. Well, Dale, we are going to take a short break. I'm speaking with Dale Stanton today, the author of the book entitled The Hooker's Daughter. And when we come back, Dale, we're going to just continue because I want to know who's been the biggest influence in your life. So we'll address that when we come back. Right now, we're going to play a song by Desiree called You Gotta Be.